Compassion for Americans with autism and their families. There's still so much that we don't know about the conditions, and there are many questions to be answered. And that's why I was glad that you recently announced an autism research database similar to a registry that you created. The NIH has more than 80 registries for different diseases, and they're a critical tool to understand disease progression. But even in spite of all of that, you were immediately attacked for privacy violations and accused of ulterior motives. Can you tell us today, how will this database handle protected health information, and is it an opt-in or an opt-out database?
This is like, thank you, Senator, for asking that. This is a database, as you say, there's actually 190 disease databases at my agency. Almost every important disease has a registry. And the red arthritis has a registry, for example, heart disease, cancer, various kinds of cancers. And the registry is intended to help scientists research what causes the etiology of diseases and also what the cures are. It's entirely voluntary. Patient privacy is protected. The data is digitalized and depersonalized so that people cannot find out who the patient is. And patients have an absolute right to opt out of it. So it's entirely voluntary. But it's a very important tool for scientists to use who want to understand how to treat diseases. If there's a number of people who've used, for example, chelation therapies on autism, and you can look at that, you can see what the outcomes were, or other kinds of therapies, microbiome treatments, all these various treatments that physicians and frontline treatment nurses and doctors are using across the country to address disease and find out which ones work and which ones don't.
You've also been accused of assuming an environmental cause of autism and rejecting a genetic cause. Can we say that your critics are misrepresenting what you really believe?
Well, I don't think, I think if my critics are saying that I reject a genetic cause, I think they're correct in the sense that the autism is an epidemic and the genes do not cause epidemics. They can contribute a vulnerability, but you need an environmental toxin. It's like cigarettes and smoking. Smoking cigarettes was killing 1 out of every 5 of its customers, the tobacco industry. That meant 4 out of 5 were survived. So there's a genetic component to the ones who got lung cancer and died. And that is a genetic vulnerability, but you also need an environmental toxin. You cannot have a sudden epidemic without an environmental exposure.
Have you halted or redirected funding away from any pre-existing autism research?
I am told, and I haven't done this calculation myself, but I'm told that there was a 20-to-1 research ratio for genetic cause of autism over the past 20 years at NIH. And if you ask me, I believe that was because they did not want to look at the environmental exposures because they were scared of what they'd found. So I don't think we should be funding that genetic work anymore. I think we know a lot about the genes that provide vulnerabilities, high testosterone, low glutathione, the MTHFR gene, the genes that control methylation, all of these are involved, and we know that. And what we really need to do now is to identify the environmental toxins.
I appreciate greatly your attention and effort on that. Secretary Kennedy, we're importing 1/3 of our medicines from China. It's a public health risk as well as a national security risk, and you and I discussed this in your confirmation hearing. I asked you at that point about reshoring medicine production from China during that hearing. I wonder if you could give us any updates on how that's happening.
Yeah, I think there are very exciting things happening, and some of them is a direct result of President Trump's tariffs. And I've been working very closely with David Ricks of Eli Lilly. I think they've been the most aggressive of any of the pharmaceutical companies about answering President Trump's summons to onshore production. They have 9 facilities now that are breaking ground. And they're valid. One of them, the API facility that they're breaking ground on, will be, I believe, the biggest API facility in the world. These are ingredients, active pharmaceutical ingredients. China controls that market right now, and this single facility could give us back dominance of that market. So I'm very, very optimistic about what's happening, and I'm very grateful to Eli Lilly, which has not always been a big ally of mine. And I'm grateful, and we've been working very closely with the leadership of Eli Lilly to make sure they get what they need to onshore production, because we saw during COVID that for essential medicines, we cannot afford to have the ingredients offshored.
Thank you for your leadership. I yield back.
Senator Moore.